Hello and welcome to the Democratic New Jersey gubernatorial debate presented by Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield. I'm Laura Jones, and tonight we are bringing you the first debate among the Democratic candidates vying for the nomination for governor of New Jersey. The winner of the June primary will advance to the November general election, aiming to succeed Governor Phil Murphy. Tonight, we are coming to you live from Rider University in Lawrenceville. This debate is presented by Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Jersey and is sponsored by RWJ Barnabas Health, Prudential, and McCarter and English. The debate is produced by the New Jersey Globe, On New Jersey, and Rider University. Join us this evening here on the stage are 6 candidates, and we do have a live studio audience. We are going to ask the members of the audience to refrain from making noise, including clapping or other audible reactions during the debate. Now, as I introduce the candidates, there will be one time and one time only you're allowed to break those rules, and that is to show your appreciation with applause for the candidate. And that is now the time to welcome our candidates to the stage. First up, Steve Sweeney, former president of the New Jersey State Senate. Ras Baraka, Mayor of Newark. Steve Fulop, Mayor of Jersey City. Sean Spiller, President of the New Jersey Education Association and former Mayor of Montclair. Mikey Sherrill, U.S. Representative for New Jersey's 11th Congressional District. Josh Gottheimer, U.S. Representative for New Jersey's 5th Congressional District. And we welcome the candidates. Joining me on the panel is David Wildstein, editor of the New Jersey Globe, Micah Rasmussen, director of the Rebovich Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University, and Joey Fox, congressional correspondent for the New Jersey Globe. Now, we've gone over the rules of the debate and have a lot of questions to get into, so we're going to jump right into opening statements. Mikey Sherrill, you won our candidate draw and will go first, followed by Steve Sweeney, Sean Spiller, Josh Gottheimer, Ras Baraka, and Steve Fulop. Mikey Sherrill, you have the floor, 1 minute.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks to New Jersey Globe, On New Jersey, and Rider University for hosting tonight. I'm Mikey Sherrill. I have a different kind of experience, so I'll be a different kind of governor. I went to the United States Naval Academy. I served for almost 10 years as a Navy helicopter pilot. I then went on to serve again at the U.S. Attorney's Office. And I've got 4 great kids, and now I'm in Congress, making sure I'm delivering for you. In fact, I've been named the most effective member of Congress from the New Jersey delegation. So I'm not going to put up with the status quo. I'm going to get things done. When you know who I am, you know who I serve. You know who I work for. It's you. So let's build something.
Thank you very much. Steve Sweeney, you're next.
And again, thank you, Rider, the Globe, for putting this together. My name's Steve Sweeney. I'm a union iron worker, and I think I took a little bit of a different path to this place where I'm at today. And right out of high school, I went to work as an iron worker, and on my way, my journey, I had a daughter born with a disability, and it changed my world overnight. It made me determined to look after the person that doesn't have the voice, people that are looked at and are looked over at all times. So, you can complain about things, or you can do something about it. Well, I did. I ran for office to be an advocate for those people, and my daughter, and was very successful in helping them. But also along the way, my father always taught me, look out for the little guy. Always look out for the little guy. And that's why we raised the minimum wage, and we did paid family leave and earned sick leave. We did things that make a difference in people's lives. So I took a little different path than everyone up here, but I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Sean Spiller, you're next.
Thank you. I'm running for governor because this is our chance to do things differently. In this state, we've seen for far too long where folks often are serving those who fund their campaigns, the uber rich and the ultra wealthy. And we know this is our chance to fight for folks like you and me. We know who is in those back rooms making those decisions, and we know it's not us. That's why I'm running for governor, to change that, to make sure that our voices are heard, to make New Jersey affordable, to bring down the cost of housing and healthcare and childcare, and yes, to protect every family from the disaster that's in the White House. But we're not going to do that by doing the same old things in the same old ways. We've got to do that by changing things. I say this as a science teacher and as a coach. I say this as a son of immigrants and an immigrant myself. I say this as a black man in America raising 2 young boys. And I say this as somebody who's dedicated my career to fighting for teachers, educators, parents, and most importantly, our kids. Now, I may not be the handpicked candidate, but I am looking to be your candidate and your governor, because this is our chance. Thank you.
Josh Gottheimer, you're next.
Thank you to the Globe, and very grateful to Ryder for having us. I just finished my 21-county tour of diners across Jersey, and I'll tell you, booth after booth, I'm hearing the same thing. Jersey's just too damn expensive. And families are saying to me, I want to stay here. I want my kids to be able to afford to grow up here and be able to raise their families here, but we just can't afford it. Between property taxes and child care costs and the cost of food and health care and utility bills, it's killing us. And I get it. I want everyone to be able to be here because we love Jersey. So what we're going to do is we've got to make Jersey more affordable. That's why I'm running as the lower taxes, lower cost governor. And I put out just a couple weeks ago a tax cut plan that shows how we're going to make Jersey more affordable. We're going to cut property taxes by about 15%. We're going to give seniors a break and make sure we have a rental rebate to help people who rent. And we're going to do everything we can to grow our state and bring more jobs here. We can do this. I'm a problem solver. People will say this is impossible, but that's the wrong attitude. We can get this done, and I have a long record of solving problems for our families. Thanks so much.
Russ Baraka, you're next.
The wealthy in this state have bankers, lobbyists, big law firms to represent their interests. The rest of us depend on the governor of the state of New Jersey. I don't come from a wealthy family, a big law firm. I'm not being funded by special interests with a $35 million piggy bank. I'm not getting funded by Elon Musk or SpaceX or Donald Trump's cousins and nephews or investment bankers. I'm just a regular kid from the city of Newark, a teacher, an activist, an educator who became the mayor for the last 10 years fighting difficult and intractable problems, working people's problems, every single day. And I know people out there are afraid and scared because Donald Trump has been wreaking havoc for the last week, which is why we need a strong leader, a strong governor that stands strong on democratic values. We don't have the time to meander in the middle, to be mealy-mouthed or this way or that way. We can't fight extremism with moderation. So we have a chance to show the rest of the country we choose hope over fear. We choose our future over our past. We choose Ras Baraka, a strong leader, a problem solver, a Democrat for governor of the state of New Jersey.
Steve Phillip, your opening statement.
Let me start by saying thank you to David and the New Jersey Globe team. I come from a family of immigrants, Holocaust survivors. And growing up, my father always told me to take the path less traveled. It's more difficult, but it's more rewarding. It's the reason after 9/11, when I was working in a prominent investment bank, I chose the unorthodox path of leaving to enlist in the Marine Corps to serve in Iraq. It's the reason when I came back and Democrats couldn't find somebody to challenge Bob Menendez, I raised my hand and said I'd do it. It's the reason in 2005 and 2013, I ran outside the political establishment to change how a council person works and how the mayor works. And Jersey City has been demonstrated as being a leader on social services, on economic issues, on criminal justice reform. I'm running a campaign to change New Jersey and to reform it. I'm unapologetic about that, and I hope you will join me on that effort.
Time now to go to our panel, and we take it to Joey Fox. You are first.
So all 6 of you are seeking to succeed Governor Phil Murphy. He's a fellow Democrat. He's led the state for the last 7 years. So I'm going to ask a simple question that I'm going to go down the line and have each of you answer, and then we can talk about it more. But for now, I'm looking for one letter, which is what letter grade would you give Governor Murphy's administration for the last 7 years? So I'll start with you, Senator Sweeney.
C.
C.
B+.
C minus.
As a teacher, you know you don't judge a person by one grade alone, but I'll say this, C+, maybe B.
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 Okay, I'll ask you, Congresswoman Sherrill. You gave one of the highest grades here. What What's your thinking? Why would you think that Governor Murphy is a B governor?
So I think something Governor Murphy did well was to fully fund the pension system for the first time in decades. That's critically important to our credit rating, and I think it's going to make a huge difference on how we invest in the future of New Jersey. What I'm less happy with is the state of New Jersey Transit. We've just been through the third summer of hell, and I think we need innovative ways as we look forward to how we are going to fund this, how people are going to have a better rail experience, but also a better experience on our roads and in our bus service as well.
Senator Sweeney, you gave a lower letter grade there. What's
Well, I worked with Governor Murphy, and look, a C for me is a good grade, just so you know. Okay, but my point is, to what Congresswoman Charles said, New Jersey Transit's a wreck, and too many people depend on it. It needs to be fixed. I give the governor a lot of credit for signing the corporate business tax to invest in New Jersey Transit. There's one big problem. They didn't constitutionally dedicate it. And knowing how the budget process works, that money will be gone in 3 years. Mark my words, if it's not dedicated. So most importantly is, New Jersey's in a tough spot. It's too expensive. It needs to be more affordable. We need to take on the tough things. And I am very proud that I partnered with Governor Murphy to fully fund the pension system that we've put $50 billion in since 2011.
I don't want to be too didactic about who gets to speak, so if anyone else would like to talk about Mayor Phillip.
Yeah, look, I think Governor Murphy's done some good things. I think funding the pension and education has been great, and New Jersey Transit has been a failure. I give him an average grade because good leadership are people that are bold, that push boundaries. If you think about the things that he touts, cannabis, minimum wage, paid sick leave, each of those things, New Jersey was not bold. We were late to the party. By the time we got to $15 minimum wage, 10 other states were already there. It needs to be higher in New Jersey. Cannabis, we were late to the party on that. Paid sick leave. Jersey City happened to be the first to do that. So it's hard for me to give him a grade better than average in a situation where I think leadership needs to be bold and push boundaries. And I don't think New Jersey has done that over the last 8 years.
Well, I would say, while we beat up on Governor Murphy here, that most of the things he's done have been very, very difficult to do in prior administrations. Raising the minimum wage has been difficult. Paid sick leave has been difficult. Making sure that prisoners had a right to vote when they came home from parole or probation. Making sure we fight for equity, a public bank. All of these things are incredible things that could not have happened administration before that. And many of these folks were there. Were there when it couldn't happen. Were there when the ball couldn't be moved, when the obstacles couldn't be removed. They were there watching these things happen and are critical of Governor Murphy for doing the things that they couldn't get done while they were there. And so the reality is, to me, that we ought to give him what credit is due. He took us up to the door of democracy. It's our job to kick it in and go inside.
Congressman Gottheimer.
Governor Murphy's gotten a lot done. I think, though, what we really need to focus on is affordability. We're now the #1 out-migration state in the country 7 years running. We're losing a lot of people and we're losing a lot of jobs. 15% of our public companies have left in the last decade. Those are a lot of good-paying jobs for folks. We need to grow our state and make it affordable for people. Childcare costs are killing them, utility costs are killing them, and property taxes and income taxes are really hurting people. We need to make sure that the state is a place that people can raise their families, they can retire, that seniors can afford it, and then of course we want people to come here and raise their families. So I really think we've got to, as a state, make sure we focus like a laser beam and getting taxes down for people, which is my tax cut plan is all about making life more affordable, and I really think that's got to be job one.
Well, all of us are going to say that. All of us are
let me
going
say
to
this.
I'll let Mayor Spiller go because he
Yeah.
has not yet.
I say this. I think we all agree there are things that Governor Murphy has done, and certainly I don't think there's been a better governor for education and funding in some of those spaces and doing the things that benefit our kids. But every single day when I talk to folks, it's about affording the home, your first home, or affording your rent, or being able to afford the taxes you pay. It's about making sure that when you're sending your kid to quality early education or childcare that's costing you $20,000 or more, how does that burden your family? And how do you get by and support yourselves? It's in every single space where people say, listen, healthcare costs continue to rise. And we keep having the conversation about how do we pull health benefits away from folks or make you pay more as opposed to getting quality, affordable care for all. These are the challenges that I think New Jersey residents are still facing. And to get that A grade, what we need to do is do better in those spaces. And that's what I'm going to do as governor.
And I just have to address something the mayor said. We passed all those laws and Governor Christie vetoed them. We passed minimum wage. We passed paid family leave. We passed a whole lot of laws. It's not easy. Understand, coming in here and saying, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and not knowing how this place works, it is hard work, especially when you only have 21 or 22 or 23 members. But I'm proud we did paid family leave. Very proud of that. I'm proud that we did minimum wage. Guess what? Not easy to do. When we did minimum wage, we indexed it. Not easy to do. We went to the voters for that. So, look, nothing's easy in this state. It's going to take a lot of hard work and a strong fight to get things done.
Well, I'm glad that he said that it wasn't easy, because that's true. Because legislature's jobs is to pass the law and put it on an executive's desk for them to execute it. You have to give the governor the credit for executing a few things. We all know the state is not affordable. We all know there are difficulties that this state has that we have to fix when I become the governor of the state of New Jersey. We know this, right? And so we can't use voodoo economics. We can't say we're going to reduce housing costs but take money from the people who are raising housing in the first place. We have to be serious and honest about the plans that we have and begin to figure out how to reduce costs by lowering the people's bills, by making healthcare costs lower, right? By making housing costs lower, by making costs lower for people who want to have people watching their children. All of the costs have to be reduced, right? That's the only way you're going to reduce people's taxes is by reducing the costs.
We're going to move on now to Micah Rasmussen, who has the next question for our panel.
Would you please raise your hand if you support capping the amount of state aid a school district can lose from year to year at either 2% of last year's budget or the total amount of state aid it receives? Both of these have been proposed. So either one of those, if you support capping the amount of state aid that a district can lose in 1 year.
Micah, I think these are pretty complicated issues that we should have a debate over and discuss rather than sort of an up-down. That's why we're here, and I'd love to hear from people about how we move forward the best way in our school system, and I'm happy to address people about that. I think we look around this and we've seen full funding of the school formula, but we know it's not totally fair. It doesn't put more into some of the districts that have more people with learning disabilities. For example, we know that year over year it causes a lot of disruption as school districts get their numbers too late, so they start this mass layoff before school starts. And we know we have to take a look at the formula itself, which was done in 2008, and modernize it. So it's a good start that this administration has done in fully funding it, but more needs to be done to modernize it and to make sure, as you suggested, there aren't those shifts year over year.
Let me tell you why, though, this is an easy one to raise your hand for right away, because in too many of our communities, for our kids, and certainly for their families in our schools, you can't have a space where you reduce the aid by such an amount that all of a sudden the services that so many are relying on are pulled out from under their feet. That is not fair. That is not how anyone would budget or figure things out. And certainly we talk about the formula absolutely has to be looked at. We've got to make the modifications that were required when it was first passed. And these can account for some of the pieces here. But when we are in a system where you plan as a district and as a community for what your school budget is going to be, you're trying to meet the needs of students with special needs, and you might have reasons why those dollar amounts change for you drastically. What cannot be the solution is we're going to have it reduced at such a level that you've got students in those classrooms who don't get to take the courses they need, don't get the supports that they need to get that shot at a great education. That's not the space we go in, and that's why I think it's an easy one to answer.
Micah, I want to just add on to that. There's no municipality in the state of New Jersey that had a larger reduction in municipal aid than Jersey City as it relates to our schools. $250 million, and they gave us a very small runway on that. It is unfair for the reasons that I think that Sean touched on, that it forces districts to make unfair choices that impact parents. I think being a mayor and having an understanding of how municipal budgets work and interact with school budgets is an asset in this. I think what Raz said earlier is important as well, understanding and being able to hit the ground running. Anybody who advocates for a significant cut, more than that 2%, I think just doesn't understand how municipal government works.
Well, honestly, I think we need to talk about the root of this issue. The school funding formula does need to be changed and looked at. There's also too many districts, right? We have too many superintendents. We have more districts than we actually have mayors. We need to be talking about unified school districts. You can't have a district with just one school in them. There has to be at least in an elementary school, and middle school, and a high school. You bring these school districts together, you begin to talk about what funding looks like. You need more kids in the seats, more kids in the schools. We have to get rid of segregation and integrate our schools so kids can be in these seats and we can get more money to municipalities. That's the bottom line. You're talking about people who are losing money. They're losing money for two reasons. They have less kids, right? Or the demographic of their city has changed. It's no longer Abbott. And so we have to figure out how to fund kids with special needs, how to fund English language learners, how to fund kids that are gifted, and begin to fund diversity in schools so schools are not segregated where most of the school is predominantly white or predominantly African American. We have to figure out how to create diversity in schools.
Steve Sweeney.
I actually wrote S2, which is the school funding law. And we did it for one reason. 70% of the kids were underfunded in this state and 30% were overfunded. School districts were getting funding where they didn't have the children. They weren't physically in the building. They were getting funding for. So this wasn't an easy bill. We actually did pass a bill, and it didn't, Governor Murphy vetoed it, which was saying, okay, whatever you lose, up to the dollar you use, you can raise above the 2%. But his point is raising property taxes. More importantly, schools had 15 years to shrink the size of their school districts where they didn't have children and they didn't do it. Now they're complaining about it, I understand, but what's fair is the money following the child, and we need, since I did the bill, 5 months. I mean, every 5 years you need to re-examine the formula.
Well, what about that? Can I ask you a follow-up, and you can combine them together?
Sure.
So what about Senator Sweeney's idea that districts should be able to exceed the 2% cap on property taxes to meet their local fair share?
I think the bigger issue that we should talk about is not just fixing the formula, which I think is critical, as everyone's talked about, but also we need to be looking at, and I think this is critical, at what do we do to make sure that we have, as Governor Murphy talked about, all-day kindergarten everywhere in the state, but also universal pre-K. We have so many kids who are going into school who are not prepared, who are not ready. To me, this is a huge priority, and it will be a huge priority of mine as governor, to make sure all of our kids have a chance to be prepared. If we invest in the front end, it pays off dividends forever, not just for them, but for our economy. It'll make our state stronger, right? And we are a great state. And we've got the best schools in the country and the best educators. We should be very, very proud of that fact. And we got to keep making sure, because people come here for that reason, that we have the best schools for everyone.
Well, not all of our schools. Some of our schools are 3 or 4 miles away from schools where half the third graders can't read on grade level. The inequity in the school district resembles the inequity in this state, right? The reality is the social determinants that make it difficult for kids to start school early, like having quality housing at a cost that they can afford. You can't get money from Blackstone and BlackRock, who driving prices up in the markets, making it difficult for people to buy housing, driving homelessness up 24% in the state, and then say you want kids to start school ready to learn. They have to be able to start school in a home with a roof over their head and food in their belly in order to start school ready to learn. Universal pre-K is right, but before we get to universal pre-K, we need to be talking about how do we put kids in seats. The seats are empty because these districts are segregated and they're by themselves. We need to widen those districts, join them with other districts, and fight desegregation in this state.
I want to just say something about the DC.
But both
He's
things can
right.
be true.
I'm
Both
just
things
going
can
to
be
one
true.
thing, Sean, real quick. I'm going to say 2 things on that.
I was-
Hopefully.
Steve Sweeney was next. Steve Sweeney was next.
Listen, I think everyone here has to agree pre-K is extremely important. I would tell you we need to take it down lower, to a lower age, because there's been proof children do so much better. My daughter was 2 pounds when she was born. She has Down syndrome. She did early intervention. My daughter, who had Down syndrome, was learning as a baby. 85% of your brain develops from birth to 5 years old. The sooner we can get these kids, the better they are. In their studies, these children are more prepared for life. Their 20% score, their test scores are 20% higher. And Governor Murphy should be given a ton of credit for expanding pre-K, which was only a dream when Senator Ruiz and I was talking about it in 2015. Governor Murphy actually made it happen, and I can't thank him
Grade
enough.
keeps going up. His grade is going up. You
Well,
gotta
I have
be
to
that.
recognize it, man. Hey, good is good.
I wanted to say we agree on universal pre-K, and we agree, and hopefully it's a good segue on desegregation of the schools to talk about housing and how that is part of the conversation as it relates to desegregation. I want to say also on the school funding formula, all of us will agree that it needs to be changed. But the problem in Trenton is when you put the formula forward and it's undermined by the politics. So when somebody reduces their funding or they have a reduced amount of funding and political people complain and is reimbursed the following year, it undermines the integrity of the entire equation. And I think that's part of the problem in Trenton that needs to change.
Yeah, look, what I was going to say before is that both things can be true. When we talk about having the best schools in the nation, We absolutely do. It's because we have the best educators, we have the best partners and parents, we have the best students who are working hard each and every day. But we know that it is not the same in every single one of our zip codes, but we have to be honest about, in our conversations about what are all the reasons. Our schools are a reflection of our communities in so many ways. And when we've under-resourced our communities, taken jobs out and opportunities away, when we don't have the opportunity for parents to be able to help and support their students because they're working that second, third, fourth job, all of these challenges when students can't come to school with the meals in their bellies, ready to learn, or don't feel safe and protected, these things have an impact. So when we talk about this, I think more broadly, we have to say, as people would often criticize me saying, hey, listen, you're a teacher, stay in your lane, talk about reading, writing, math. I'd say, no, we've got to talk about these other pieces as well, because if we want to see that quality education that we know is there and available and needs to be supported in every single one of our communities and schools, we've got to support the drivers that impact it and make it so hard for that to happen.
Both of them are
Thank you.
true.
We're going to move on. We're going to move on now to David Wildstein for their next question.
Thank you. As candidates talk about shifting power away from party bosses, one way to increase the voices of everybody in state government is by allowing voters to have initiative and referendum, to allow them to put something on the ballot where grassroots organizations can help spur debate and affect policy decisions. Right now, as you know, it can only be done by the legislature. So this is. I'm just going to ask everybody: thumbs up or thumbs down? Do you support initiative and referendum? Do you support the public's ability to do that?
I would say this, in an example of the thumbs up, thumbs down before, I think we see some of the swings that happen in other states that have this, where it goes back and forth in dramatic ways. But before we get to that, if you're talking about the influence of a very small number of folks who get into a back room and decide maybe who our political candidate is and who we all have to support, when you talk about trying to have public and our engagement of the voters, let's start with the fact that let's allow the voters to actually pick our candidates. Let's allow the voters to be the ones to decide who's going to represent us. Let's allow the voters to be the ones who say, that candidate represents my interests and they're fighting for me. Right now, I think so many are turned off by a system where we all know, you don't even get a vote in it, and you're told once again who to get out there and put up that lawn sign for. For me, I think we have to start there as we look at all the other tools at our disposal to make sure there's more of a voice in our decision making.
David, I love that idea. In fact, I'd love to see a constitutional amendment for abortion on the ballot that the voters want. I do think I'd like to see the process. We want to make sure that these decisions to put stuff on the ballot have a good process and enough people to support it. But I think that's a great idea.
But the reality. Go ahead.
Go
I'll let
ahead,
you go.
man.
Go ahead.
After you.
You guys are being so kind to each
Yeah,
other.
We like each other.
I'm helping them out, man.
We like each other.
The reality is, ultimately, is based on the people in charge and how they see the problems that the folks in New Jersey have. I don't think they see the majority of the folks in New Jersey. That's why they're interested in making laws or making policy with a few people, because they don't see the issues that we have. Most people in New Jersey are invisible to these folks. That's why we're arguing about should people who make $500,000 or more get a tax break when most working families don't. That's why we're saying we should put abortion on a referendum, and not just saying that, but also talking about equity. The fact that African American women die 7 times more in hospitals than anybody else. It don't matter how great the bill is if we don't have access to health care, if we don't have access to the same resources that everybody else has, then it doesn't matter at all. And yeah, schools are the same in certain neighborhoods, in certain communities. The reality is the people in power are making decisions that do not affect the majority of the folks in this state.
And listen, we're all talking about how much we hate the amount of money that's in politics. Do you realize how much money will be spent on initiatives where working class people don't have the same tools? No, I don't support it. I support elections that elect a governor and a legislature, and if you're unhappy with what they do, you should not vote for them again. But look at California as a perfect example. $60, $70 million on the issues. What did you elect people for? What's the purpose of electing people to represent you if you're going to give up your responsibility? Listen, it's not afraid to let people in. I'm worried about the money that's going to be used to push policies that we don't believe in.
Yeah, I'm going to say if anybody has a question on who Trenton represents, I mean, you need to think just last year. Open public records rolled back despite the fact that hundreds, if not thousands, of advocates came out saying that you shouldn't do that. The year before that, campaign finance rules being rolled back despite the fact that hundreds, if not thousands of people came out saying, please don't do that. Why? Because there is no accountability in Trenton. The structure is from these political bosses that control it and have monetized the system for themselves. Of course, giving the opportunity to regular people to put initiative and ballot referendums out there is a positive. It encourages more democracy, and we should trust our residents that they're going to make smart decisions.
Well, let me ask a follow-up.
yeah,
Mayor,
that's-
I want
yeah.
to ask you a
Yeah,
follow-up.
that's-
What can New Jersey do to empower communities that have been disinterested in the process in order to have them vote more often and have them more engaged in what's happening in their
They have to
communities?
see themselves in the policies that are created. If I took a picture of this room, the first person you look for in the picture is yourself. If you don't see yourself, then it becomes less interesting to you. Then you begin looking for people you know. If you don't see people you know, then you might put the picture down because it doesn't engage you. It doesn't have anything to do with you. These policies that are created in the state don't resemble the majority of the people of this state. It resembles a slim margin of folks that we debate and that we argue about all the time. Let's be honest. Like, we can talk about who's the boss, and some people are mad because they ain't the boss. But the reality is the same thing as with money. You can't not raise your own money and then have a $35 million piggy bank or get money from huge investment bankers or get money from military contractors and all these folks and don't believe it'll have an impact on these elections, have an impact on your decisions. That's just not true. So the reality is, yeah, we need to create policy. We need to talk to people. We need to go to bars and barbershops and beauty parlors and get folks involved in our elections. But ultimately, we need to make sure we're raising money from the same people we're going to get our votes from. Why? Because we can't get our votes from one side of the community and our money from another side of the community and expect our policies to match.
You know, I say this though because I heard the mayor just note this. I've heard him say it, like allude to it at least a couple times here.
No, I said
and
it
as
twice.
as a former educator,
I didn't allude to it. I
yeah,
said
well,
it. Yeah.
you know, and as an educator, former educator, I think you'd know this, right? I'm really proud about the fact that we've got educators in this state, hardworking folks who've come together, voluntarily joining a union, saying, "Hey, listen, we all know who's in those back rooms making the decisions, and we know it's not us. That's why we want our voices out there. That's why we want to make sure we can pool our dollars." They'll never compete with the Elon Musks and the other millionaires, billionaires, Wall Street, big oil. You go down the line. But we know that the only way we have at least a chance of being in the conversation and having our issues front and center is by making sure we engage in the process.
But we don't want to get rid of the king and make another king.
And everything at a time.
I don't want to get rid of the king and make another king.
Listen,
I'm
if you,
opposed
as
to
you said,
kingdoms.
when
We
we're
won
trying
the
to-
war. The
when we're
British lost.
trying
We have
to
a democracy.
represent- When we're trying to represent the people, Mayor, it's important that we're understanding that those who are funding, I couldn't agree with you more, matter. And when you're funded by hard-working folks in this state, and I'm really proud of all the small dollar donations from so many working class folks in this state, that matters, yes, because that's who I'm going to fight for on every issue. Because those are the issues that they're facing, those are the issues that I'm facing. I see them each and every day as that teacher with the parents who are making tough choices for my kids. I see it as a father myself with the cost of everyone's talking about, pre-K. Yeah, I'm paying, I know it right now, I'm living that, right? I'm talking about the folks who say, I can't afford that housing, done something about it in Montclair, right? These are the conversations that every single one of those folks you're referencing is dealing with each and every day. And I'm proud of the fact that they've come together to say, we're going to support somebody who finally speaks for us, as opposed to the Wall Street, the rich, and everyone else.
So before we go ahead, Senator.
You know, here's the point. I'm a union iron worker. How am I going to match these guys with millions and millions of dollars? So the point is, not you, brother, not you, not you. But my point is, you know, we're upset about money in politics, and you ask a question about, let's do initiative for referendum, and that's going to bring more money into politics, right, to sway the outcome. So people like myself, who I'm pretty proud to say I'm a blue-collar guy, I can't compete. I can't fight that. We, the people, need to take it back. You take it back with your vote. That's what I'm focused on, and that's what I'm working towards.
And let me go back, we could close this with just one follow-up. Congresswoman Cheryl, you mentioned codifying legalized abortion rights into the Constitution. Is there anybody on this stage who doesn't think there should be a referendum to put that in as a constitutional
Can I
amendment?
say
I
something
called
about
for
that?
it. I called for it in my campaign when I announced it. We codified it legislatively, the law in New Jersey. We absolutely have to protect a woman's right to choose.
So I want to say I agree with that totally, and we should codify it. I think that we should be thinking about Senator Teresa Ruiz's bill as well, her package that talks about equity, that talks about making sure not only do we codify this as law, but making sure that people have access to those resources, that we can't have a healthcare system that's unequal, where some people enjoy the benefits and the privilege of a democracy that's been established in the state and other people cannot because they don't have access to it. Talk about working class families, black and brown families, people in the state of New Jersey who live next to hospitals and can't afford to go into those hospitals, or who live in rural communities who don't have access to hospitals directly in front of them. We have to add that to the bill as well. And so we can't see a few people, we have to see the majority of the people in this state, or all of the people in this state. We can't leave black, brown, and working families, working women out of this, particularly since African American women die 7 times more in the hospital giving birth than anybody else.
We're going to break from our panel because we have a student from Rider University, a few students throughout this debate who are going to be coming up to the stage with a question. Our first one is coming from our Rider University student, Leslie Antoine Jr., and I believe they're going to bring Leslie up. There we go. Welcome.
Good evening. Good evening. The state budget under Governor Murphy has increased by 61%. If the same thing happens during your tenure, our state budget would grow to more than $90 billion a year. Do you think that will happen while you're governor? And if not, what are the major areas of state spending you'll cut?
And Micah was going to determine which candidate was going to answer that one.
Sure.
Because it is Rider University.
There you go. Why don't we start with Congressman Gottheimer?
Thank you, and it's a great and really important question. You're right, the spending keeps going up, and the challenge we're having for people is, do they really feel like they're getting 60% more for their money? Mentioned about Jersey Transit, right? In the summers, their trains are late or canceled altogether. And you look around, childcare costs in the state, second highest in the country. People are struggling. So what we need to do is actually run a more efficient government. Part of what I focused on as part of my tax cut plan at joshforjersey.com is how we're going to cut property taxes, give people a break, seniors a break, and break on rent to help deal with affordability, but by doing it in 3 big ways to actually pay for it, because my plan is fully paid for. 1, we gotta make sure we stop letting New York rip us off. They're totally ripping us off, right? $1.4 billion a year, our taxpayers ship to New York, because if they work from home, but work for a New York company, if they work from home in Jersey, they're paying income taxes there. We can save 5% on making our government more efficient. Like things like procurement, how we buy stuff. It's sitting out there. We can do it, especially given how much more we're spending. We certainly can save some money. And third, we got to get more money back from the federal government to Jersey. We can do that too.
Yeah.
We can make things more affordable here in Jersey.
Can I just say, look, I think this is a place where being a mayor and understanding how municipal government interacts with Trenton is a huge asset. If you look at the last 8 years, whatever you grade Governor Murphy, he came from being the ambassador and didn't have municipal experience. And prior to that was 8 years of Christie, who didn't have municipal experience. And prior to that was 4 years of John Corzine, who had no municipal experience. I think understanding it from a mayor standpoint, you do understand the fact that we constantly have from Trenton unfunded mandates. They tell us, do this is well-intentioned, you should do that, and they don't help us with any resources for that. I think that needs to be the starting point on visiting how Trenton interacts with municipal government. The second thing is the budget process needs to be reformed. The way we introduce budgets is January, February, and sunlight cleanses it. It happens for several months where the public gets to scrutinize it. What happens in Trenton is it gets introduced 2 days before it's passed, and that is at the core of the problem of getting reductions there.
So I think we need a 3-year forecast of what the budget looks like. We can't use voodoo economics. We can't make Mexico pay for our bills like New York. We can't do that. And we can't build the efficiency government like Donald Trump wants to build. But ultimately, we need to lower costs. And one of the highest costs is healthcare, right? We need to lower healthcare costs by reference-based pricing. That's what we need to do immediately, right? We need to, if we just reduced it to 150% above Medicare, right, we would save over $1 billion over 2 or 3 years in the state. Yeah, our costs are high. Our spending are high. We gave millionaires a tax break from 2010 to 2022 in the tune of $15 billion. Of course, we don't have any money because we've let the wealthy get away. We've taken from the poor, and we made the middle class foot the bill. That's what's happening, and people are beating around the bush trying to make this continue to happen. And so, yeah, we do need to rein in spending, but we need to rein in costs by lowering costs, making the wealthy pay their fair share here, and be more efficient by making sure we cap pricing on hospitals, that we cap spending on insurance that we have to pay over and over and over again to rise costs. We're not selling pies out of back of the state government. So our revenue comes from taxes. And if we don't lower the bill, the taxes don't go down, the costs don't go down. If the prices go up, we're going to be paying more. Reduce prices, reduce costs,
Okay.
make spending efficient.
Steve Sweeney.
We have to completely overhaul the procurement process. I was proud we created a bill on reverse auctions for PBMs. We saved $2.5 billion over 5 years. It's a bill that I did to make sure we're getting the best bang for the buck. Procurement has to be looked at every 3 years. A budget process absolutely has to be reformed. So we work with the legislature, not against the legislature. I'm the one candidate up here who said I'm willing to give up authority as governor to come up with a better process. We need a process where we work with the legislature so it's consensus forecasting. I wasn't a mayor. I ran a county government for 13 years. I felt like I was the mayor of the county. What you do is you do multi-year budgeting. You do 6-year capital plans so you know where you're coming and where you're going. And we should dedicate all this revenue for the purpose that it's been raised. Because what happens is money is raised for a certain purpose, and then after a year or two goes into a black hole. We need to stop spending more. We need to live within our means.
Sean Spiller, then Mikey Sherrill.
I think it is important, seeing that from the municipal level as a mayor, understanding that while we have these conversations about how we're going to lower our taxes, right? It's important to clarify, what are we talking about here, right? Because oftentimes, as the mayor said before, we see these unfunded mandates from the state. And every time we've seen governors before with these schemes and other mechanisms where they say we're not funding what we should, you know who makes up that difference? Local property taxpayers. At the municipal level, time after time, that's why we see those rising property taxes and the challenges that so many are facing. We have to look at the more equitable ways that we can raise taxes at the state level and use those taxes to support and bring down the cost of everyday residents and certainly our property taxes as well. That's got to be the focus as we're engaging in this conversation about who's paying for what and how are we getting it done. Oftentimes we're over-relying on our property taxes and we can't go back to that in any ways with underfunding at the state level.
Mikey Sherrill.
I think we have a really complicated future. And in fact, many people have said to me, why do you want to run for governor? Because the bill's going to come due in 2026 when you take your seat. And that's because I want to bring new leadership and fresh ideas to Trenton. We can drive in federal money. I've driven in over $50 billion, including for funding of the Gateway Tunnel project, including for making sure we're funding flooding in my district, making sure we're flooding mental health issues. I'm sure all of the mayors up here have appreciated the federal money we've driven into this state to fund many of the things that they most care about. That's really important, but we've also got to address and attack the state budget system, which is going to involve an independent auditor for our state health insurance program. It's going to involve making sure that we have more transparency. We're going to have to make sure that we have people paying their taxes like we did in Congress when we funded the IRS. And finally, that's not where it ends on affordability. We have got to build houses in this state. We are not going to make New Jersey more affordable if we don't make housing more affordable. And that's why I've driven in federal ideas for repurposing commercial properties. We can look at Harrison and what they've done on the waterfront, making sure that we are utilizing places like Trenton and Atlantic City and spaces that can really build more. Because as you just heard, there are unfunded mandates coming from Trenton, and too often it's for sewering systems that towns don't have, for example. We need to come up with innovative ideas as we look to drive down costs for New Jerseyans.
Josh Gottheimer, then
I just
Steve
wanna-
Sweeney.
I just
Then
wanna-
we'll excuse our student.
Oh, sorry. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. I just want to add one point, because several people are talking about how they want to raise taxes, or that we can't do this, that we can't get costs down, that we can't lower taxes for folks. This is a problem we can solve. We can't throw up our hands and say we can't do this. We can solve this problem, right? We can make housing more affordable. We can build more housing and make sure we actually get more supply out there for workforce housing, for senior housing to help families out. We can make sure we get the cost of childcare down. We can do these tough things if we actually take them on and are willing to make tough decisions and solve problems. Listen, in DC, right, over these years, when people said to me, you can't solve that problem, we got the bipartisan infrastructure bill passed. I helped write that and pass it. It's now building the Gateway train tunnel and fixing our roads and bridges. We expanded the child tax credit. We took on climate change, now the largest investment to fight climate change ever, right? And we even got common sense gun safety legislation passed. These things people said were impossible. We can do these things if we focus on it and put our mind to it, we can do it.
I couldn't agree anymore, Josh. But with all due respect, expecting more federal money from this administration is a pipe dream when they're trying to clear it back. We got to fix our own problem because Washington is not going to help us. You know, Washington, we introduce lots of bills, we make lots of promises, and it doesn't happen. I'm not blaming the members up here. I'm just blaming Washington itself. We cannot expect Washington to bail us out. Unlike Washington, where they just say, hey, leave the mint work overtime, print more money, and what's the deficit, 30-some trillion dollars? We have to balance a budget year in and year out. It's a different animal.
But we could do both, Steve, right? You would agree? We could fight to get more money back to Jersey, cops, for firefighters. And by the way, those are dollars we get back when we fight for
salt that
them.
they took
And you
from
can
us
do
while I was
both.
there.
right?
Josh, I agree.
We can do both.
We can absolutely fight for it, but knowing what's going on in Washington right now, please, you're both in Congress, bring it back. I'll cheer you both on when it comes.
Leslie, thank you very much for your question. I know David Wildstein has a follow-up.
I just want a quick follow-up, and we'll be very quick on it, but any conversation about the state budget has to involve a commitment to fully funding state pensions. So this is going to be the kind of question you all love, which is the pledge. There's three camps. You're either, yes, I will pledge to fully fund the state pension, no, I will not, or third is I'm undecided. So why don't we just quickly go down the line?
I'm proud that I was the sponsor of the bill that got the funding to fully funding. Prior to us changing the law, the state of New Jersey over the previous 20 years spent $3 billion over 20 years to fund the pension. Since we changed the law, $50 billion up to today. I'm pretty proud of that accomplishment.
I would say yes, and I think we should have a 3-year forecasting with the legislative branch and executive branch, making sure we solve for the pension, school funding, and property tax relief, that we build everything around that, and bring an outside party in to sit with us and figure out how to get this done. I walked in the City Hall with a $93 million deficit. Workers were being laid off, being furloughed 1 day a week, every day. All of the city buildings were sold. We fixed that problem, right? We went up twice in rating in Moody's. Ever since that time, we've been giving workers raises. In fact, the lowest paid worker in the city of Newark is above $40,000 a year. We fixed the budget in the city, and we took care of the least of those at the same time. So yes, we fund the pension. Yes, we fixed the budget, and we stopped taking money from special interests that are trying to make us do the otherwise.
Yes, and I would expand that. In New Jersey, there is one municipality that has its own pension system and is also part of the state pension, and that's Jersey City. I have a track record of funding the pension every single year because we prioritized it. I think once you get to Trenton, you need to be honest about the fact that there's a revenue conversation that needs to happen as well. You need to revisit tax brackets. You need to revisit what a millionaire's tax is versus the people that make $2 million and $5 million. A millionaire from 20 years ago is not the same as a millionaire today. You need to reconsider the tax rollbacks that Governor Christie put in place. You need to do that right out of the gate when you have political capital, because the revenue conversation is crucial to funding the pension. And you got to be honest with the residents that this is how you're going to make New Jersey sustainable.
We absolutely have to fully fund the pension, right? And I think we're in some of the challenging situations that we are today because so many folks have gone away from that, despite what they've said when they were coming in. We see that the challenges right now of us paying a $7.2 billion payment for something that's actually costing us about $600 million a year is because folks never lived up to their obligation. And it always greatly frustrates me going, my God, think about what we could all be doing with those dollars if people had lived up to those commitments and obligations at the time. And this is the world that we live in now, and it's certainly on us to make sure we're not kicking the can down the road. But I have to say this, as somebody who's been a mayor of a town that's reduced our debt by over $60 million, has a AAA bond rating, and making sure we've reinvested those dollars into our community to help provide the supports that our residents and our businesses need. That's the kind of creative spaces that we're going to have to be in when we look at a budget that, despite the hope that the federal government comes in and gives us more money, we're going to have to be working in situations where we are able to creatively find and combine the dollars that we have on projects to get more out of the dollars that we do have.
Well, this is why I brought up Governor Murphy's fully funding the pension as one of the things I really agree with, because we know that for years other governors kicked the can down the road. So that has left us paying over $7 billion a year for our pension system, which with right next door, New York, only paying $1.5 billion for a far larger pension system. We saw in the last administration, our credit rating dropped 11 times. It's already been going up several times. That's the cost of borrowing. That's investment in our schools and our colleges and universities. So we have got to figure out a path toward continuing to fund the pension system, or we're mortgaging our kids' future. And I think we all know what a Republican governor would look like in this instance. And once again, really mortgaging our kids' future on the backs of the workers.
We have to make our pension obligations as key to our economy, and if you don't, it ends up costing everybody in the state a lot more. It's why in my tax cut plan, we pay our pensions, and on top of that, noting that we have the highest property tax in the country, we offer a property tax cut and a middle-class income tax cut. Why? Because overall, we've got to make Jersey more affordable for everyone, and we've got to make sure people can afford to live here and retire here and come here, and making those pension payments is key to that.
And, you know, the pension system didn't break overnight. I think everyone understands that. To Sean's point, too many people ignored the payment because they thought they could. This took 10 years to get to the funding level. Because what you hear in Trenton every time is, oh, well, you're not going to fix it tomorrow. We need to fix it tomorrow. No, complicated problems need to be fixed in ways that you can get full funding. Like I said, I got branded not very nice for fixing the pension system. But you know something? When you're a leader and you're sitting in that seat, you got to make that decision. You can't ignore the responsibility to the people that you promised the pension to. So I'm proud of what we were able to do, and I'm the only one up here that has a plan that can bring back the COLA, and it's a real plan.
Okay, we're moving on with our panel. Joey Fox, you have the next question.
So as evidenced by an ICE raid in Newark last month, Donald Trump's administration is clearly going to follow through, or at least try to follow through, on its promise of widespread deportations of undocumented immigrants. So this is going to be a loaded question, but we're going to have time to talk it through. Raise your hand if you believe that one of the goals of the next governor should be protecting immigrants in New Jersey, even those who are here illegally.
We should protect everyone.
We should protect people in New Jersey, especially with the Constitution.
I'll go to Mayor Baraka to expand on that, given that it's your hometown.
Well, it's interesting that we keep saying that people are here illegally when we keep moving the goalposts. If we take away all of the reasons or ways that pathways that people become documented citizens of the United States and then say they're illegal, is a problem, right? We cannot risk the Fourth Amendment, the 14th Amendment to push this political agenda that Donald Trump has, really based in white supremacy and racism. That's really what it's based on, and nothing other than that. The reality is we have to protect our neighbors. We have to protect the folks in our community. Immigrants in New Jersey represent almost a quarter of the labor force here in this state. They bring billions of dollars to state and local taxes. They increase the revenue and the economy where we live. Immigrants in our community in Newark are store owners, right? They're business owners. They're community people. They're advocates. They're part of nonprofit organizations. Defending them and standing up for them is defending and standing up for the rest of New Jersey and American families. And I'm going to do that no matter what it takes.
Listen, I think as an immigrant, I think immigrants, can be in all those spaces and governor of New Jersey. But I say this, when I look at it as a parent, right, and I see the most powerful person in the world who's deciding that what he's going to do is send heavily armed folks into our schools, to kick down our doors, to come into our classrooms, to pull 7-year-olds out of their seats, to tell them that they're not going home today, or they're not going to be united with their parents. When we see folks who are saying we're going to barge into places of employment and say, let's show me your papers, or I'm going to detain you, and doing that to people, including folks who served in our military, it's just unacceptable. And I think as we have the conversations around comprehensive immigration reform and our border security and all those other pieces that need to be a conversation, we can't lose sight of who we are. We can't lose sight of our humanity. We can't lose sight of the fact that the role of governor, and certainly my charge, will be to protect every single resident in this state, to make sure folks understand that they're going to be safe, that they're going to be supported. We can have those conversations, but we can never lose sight of who we are.
Congresswoman Sherrill, then Mayor Phillip, then Senator Sweeney.
I think that's what's missing in the conversation so many times is basic humanity, and we desperately need comprehensive immigration reform. We need to make sure people have a pathway to citizenship, who are here, who are working hard, who are paying taxes, DACA recipients, TPS recipients, and we also need better border security. We need to know what's coming across our border, whether it's the precursor chemicals for fentanyl and where it's coming from, and we need processing. Because there are a lot of people here who are on parole just waiting to get processed through the system, and they could be picked up and deported while they're just waiting for their court date. So we need to do better, and it starts with comprehensive immigration reform.
Yeah, let me just say that there are people on this stage that have been reluctant to support or say that they support immigration. I've been unapologetic in support of the Immigrant Trust Act, and I think my track record in Jersey City is second to none. We are the only nationally accredited immigration office in a municipal building in the country that we started. We've been at the forefront of the refugee program in Afghanistan and Ukraine. I'm passionate about it as a family of immigrants. Let me give you a personal component, because I do know what Raz said is accurate, that when people see these faces on TV with the handcuffs and the ice jackets around them, they say, aha, that person should be thrown out. He's definitely a criminal. Well, I'll tell you, last week in Newark, part of the raise was my father's building. My father has been in Newark for 50 years. My father is a citizen. 20 ICE agents showed up searching every single apartment. Who lives in that building? Public school teacher, a veteran, an immigration services business, and an electrical contractor with the state of New Jersey. They searched, they arrested nobody, but the next day, one of the tenants asked to move. Now I ask you, I'm running for governor. I'm up here as a candidate at the forefront, and it can happen to my family, which means it can happen to your family as well. And it's a conversation around due process and what this country stands for, and that's why I'm so passionate about this.
You know, I made a statement about this earlier, I guess this week. You know, with Donald Trump, we all should stand and oppose what Donald Trump's doing. He's breaking the law. He's doing it illegally. He's doing it without legal search warrants. It's horrible what he's doing. But I also believe someone that's a criminal comes in this country and someone that breaks the law in this country shouldn't be in this country. It's a privilege. And by the way, I support what President Barack Obama and Senator Joe Biden did, which both of those presidents happen to be Democrats, deported more people than Donald Trump ever did. But they did it with humanity and compassion, and they did it the right way. So, look, we don't want to round up people that haven't done anything wrong, absolutely. But people that have broken the law in this country, I'm sorry, they need to leave it.
Congressman.
I just want to add that what I think is outrageous, and this point was made, is that you have President Trump ordering his people to literally go into schools, it was said, to go into restaurants, as we saw, and to churches, and literally take innocent, undocumented people and round them up. That's unacceptable. And when I'm governor, and this governor should do everything we can to use the full force of our state to stop that, right? It doesn't live up to our values. We know that those people are working hard, they're feeding their families, they're doing right. And we got to make sure that we look after them. And as Mikey talked about, the bigger issue, right, that we've got to fix is immigration reform broader, right, to make sure that we deal with the bigger system issues so that it doesn't keep happening over and over again. And what's ridiculous, again, going to President Trump, what he did, there was literally a deal done, right, to make sure that we had more processing, that we could take care of people, we have work visas. And you know what they did? The far right, they played politics with it again, using the issue. Donald Trump blew up a deal that was done by actually Democrats and Republicans. Actually, one of the most liberal Democrats in the Senate did it with one of the conservative Republicans and got a deal done. And he blew it up playing politics with it. These are about people. We should fix the bigger problem.
So, Congressman,
Do you guys support the Immigration Trust Act? That's what I would ask.
Yeah,
One at a
absolutely.
time.
I would say we have to be honest up here, number one. You can't say you support immigrants in New Jersey, but vote for the Laken-Riley Act. You can't do that. You can't say that you support immigrants and don't support immigration trust bill in New Jersey, right? We need to stop having this conversation about people being murderers and killers and rapists and criminals. We know that's a lie. There is no crime wave of immigrants in New Jersey. I'm in Newark, the state's largest city. We've reduced violence by 61%. If I solved for immigrant crime, we would almost have no crime in the city of Newark if we got rid of everybody else's crime and just let immigrants and a crime that happens in the immigrant community, they're 4 times more likely to be victims of crime than commit crime. It is wrong to sit up here and have a debate about crime that immigrants create, which we know is not true. The reality is the crime is making sure people don't have access to the American dream because of what they look like, the country they come from, the language that they speak, and the zip code that they live in. We know that's what's happening, and we have to stop it now.
So, Congressman, I do want to ask you about the Laken Riley Act. You were the only New Jersey Democrat in Congress to vote for that bill. I mean, what's your justification for that, given that you're...
If you are a murderer, a criminal, a rapist, if you're breaking into people's homes in the middle of the night with a gun while the kids are sleeping, all right, and you're undocumented, you shouldn't be here, right? And you shouldn't be in this state, you shouldn't be in this country. However, what the big focus on of what, and again, what I said before, what Donald Trump is doing by rounding people, innocent, undocumented people up and going to churches and schools, right, and going to restaurants and rounding them up, that's unacceptable. And the governor, and when I'm governor, I'm going to do this, use the full force of the state to stop it, right? And that's the key.
The great thing about the United States is we have a Bill of Rights and the Constitution of the United States, right? The reality is people come here because of the Bill of Rights, because of the Constitution. I've read somewhere that you were innocent until proven guilty. Nobody agrees that a murderer should, everybody, we have laws that convict murderers and a judge will decide if you stay here or go or whatever it is. But you cannot convict people just by accusations. We came here to prevent that from happening. My family traveled from the South and the Carolinas fleeing Jim Crow to find democracy in Newark, and millions of people from around the world came to the port city, the second largest in the nation, to find democracy and opportunity in the Constitution of the United States. We can't allow it to be eroded by sick individuals and then justify that because they'll come for them in the morning, they'll come for us in the evening.
Mayor Philip, I know you wanted to respond
Yeah,
as well.
I was just going to echo that sentiment, that you are innocent until proven guilty in this country and you are entitled to due process. And I use my family as an example. There were no warrants. There was nothing. They just searched apartment after apartment. And so I think you are entitled to certain basic rights here, and it's important that we protect it. The Laken Riley Act also served to undermine the authority of the Attorney General here in New Jersey. It is a very, very dangerous piece of legislation as it relates to autonomy of the governor and the Attorney General here, and it should not have been supported.
Senator Sweeney.
You know, we're talking about this bill in the State House that's going to make a difference. This is all federal. Everything about this is federal government. They don't have to work with us. They're breaking the laws and we should hold them accountable. But again, and to Josh's point, they had a bill. Trump blew it up. But we can pass all the bills you want. It's not stopping these guys. We got to make sure we make a change nationally in order to stop this nonsense. It's not right for people to be able to go without search warrant. It's wrong.
We can do some things.
Yeah,
We can do some things.
Yeah, and let me just say this too, though, because when we're
10
having this
seconds.
conversation, I hear a lot of talk about, you know, what we have to worry about what they're going to do to them and they're going to do to those people. Listen, they're not barging into a place and saying, you know, show me your papers and I'm only picking who? They're going to pick all of us. They're going to come for all of us. Like I'm not walking around with my papers. I don't know about you, right? But when they barge into that room, they barge into my place of employment, and they barge into my home, they're coming for all of us. They're coming for all of us, and that should scare every single one of us. That's unacceptable. That's what we stand up and fight back against. That's what we need a governor to lead in this space, to say, yes, this is wrong. It's wrong for those who are being scared and pushed underground, but it's wrong for all of us. This is affecting each and every one of us as Americans and New Jerseyans.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of passion for this topic and so many of the issues that we are covering tonight, but we're going to have to pause for just a moment and take a quick break, but we're going to come back with more questions for our candidates. This is the New Jersey gubernatorial primary debate. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Democratic New Jersey gubernatorial debate presented by Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Jersey. Now, we are running really heavy on time here, and we want to make sure we get to as many questions as possible. We're going to go next to Micah Rasmussen, and we want to give everybody a chance. He's going to pose a question to the candidates. This time, we may not have everybody answer every question, just so we can move it along and get to as much as possible. You can always have time in the closing statements as well. I will stop talking and hand it over to Micah.
As of today, the Star-Ledger and the Jersey Journal have printed their last editions. New Jersey's radio and TV landscape has also seen drastic reductions in the number of journalists who cover the state. Yet a new public records law makes it tougher for citizens to request the public information that belongs to them, and another new law has made campaign finance information less transparent. The view in Trenton is that this is not a problem people care about. Are they right or wrong? Go down the line.
I think it's very important to have more transparency. It kills me to see the press gone, pretty much gone, because, you know, people want to know what's going on. I mean, I remember when I first started in government, you know, you did something that maybe even looked a little different, you got the crap kicked out of you by the press. You know what I mean? And you should. So losing the press has absolutely hurt the public information that people need, but the public has to seek it too. You know what I mean? We really need the public to be more vigilant in pushing this stuff. We don't need less, we need more.
Anybody else like to answer that one?
Sure, I think it's a sign of the times. It's terrible. The free press is being threatened now. You have 3 or 4 tech magnates controlling social media, the information and the news that is going out there. Our ability to get objective information and news is in jeopardy here. I think that what we need to be also figuring out is why Oprah was gutted, right? Why campaign finance reform was gutted. The problem is there are few people who are passing these laws based on what they think their constituency or the people who pay them want. The majority of people in New Jersey, whether they know about this or not, it hurts them. It hurts them badly. And then we need to be, as leaders, making sure that there is transparency in government. I opposed what happened with Oprah. I came out publicly against it. I think we reversed that when I become governor. I think we begin to create more campaign finance reform and take all of this big money as well out of these campaigns. That has to happen. Not just private money, but all money, millions and billions of dollars in these campaigns is a problem.
Yeah, I was going to say that this is a place that Governor Murphy has taken some good steps. 2 years ago, I believe 2 years ago, with a bill sponsored by Loretta Weinberg, he took a step to fund a group that actually allocates money towards local publications. I think it's important to support those local outlets. In a time where you have Oprah being rolled back and campaign finance, I think absolutely the public cares about it. They came out in huge numbers, but the reason that they were able to achieve that in Trenton is that there's no accountability. The people there don't feel like they are accountable to the public. They feel like they're accountable to a political structure. In the last year, New Jersey has made some huge strides forward. Andy Kim's lawsuit to change the ballot is a huge step in creating accountability. I think Norcross being indicted, I think Menendez being convicted will help change the political landscape in a serious way. I think those are benefits. But I do think that anybody who stands up here needs to take an immediate step as soon as they get in there to put back in place Oprah to what it was before and campaign finance laws to strengthen them.
Look, I worked at the U.S. Attorney's Office. The District of New Jersey, which encompasses the whole state, was actually known to have the most public corruption. We had a huge department. We worked very hard. There's a lot of reasons for that, but rolling back transparency in the state, especially when we've just had a senator be found guilty of corruption, is not the way to go. It doesn't make people feel like their government is responsive to them. It makes them feel as if there are backroom deals, and we have to do better.
We absolutely need public support of the media, and I agree what Governor Murphy did was the right thing. You can't have less accountability and transparency when you don't have enough media. That's too often what happens. And it's obviously not just the Globe, David, but we need other press out there that are going to make sure that we can keep everybody accountable. And so I think that's critically important that we do that.
When we finish,
I
Governor Murphy
couldn't,
gonna
I
have
couldn't
an
agree more in terms of, listen,
that?
anytime you don't have
When
a
we
free,
finish, Murphy gonna have it.
a free open press and those who can cover certainly the work that those who are hoping to hold elected office hold, it's problematic. And when you talk about decreasing transparency and the ability of the public to see things, it's problematic in a lot of spaces as well, because we know that often folks rely on that to be able to hear about or see what those in power are doing, right? We think of it oftentimes in those in elected positions, but it's when we're trying to figure out what's happening at our school board and where they're spending their dollars and what they're talking about. It's where we also have the conversations at the local level and say, hey, listen, we want to be a part of the conversations where decisions are being made. And when we talk each and every time about people, I think folks feeling more and more disconnected because they see who is there purportedly to represent them but doesn't. It's all part of, I think, a building frustration that folks have, and I think we're seeing the outcomes in terms of voter turnout and other pieces.
We have another question from one of our students at Rider University, and that is Cecilia Simon. Cecilia is going to come on out to the microphone and ask your question.
Hi, I'm Cecilia Simon, and here's my question. NJ Transit has been on many voters' minds lately, especially with the recent fare increases, the enactment of congestion pricing in New York City, and the frequent service outages this last summer. What grade would you all give specifically to New Jersey Transit, and how would you change it, if at all?
F.
Yeah, F. I think we're all in agreement, possibly here.
Does anybody have a non-F grade?
No, but let's talk about congestion tax.
I have
heard
to
that in
tell
that
you,
question too.
I gotta
Yeah.
say, look, my husband commutes, and I can tell you, he hasn't coached our kids' soccer teams in years, and he loves coaching, but he just couldn't get home in time. In too many cases, he was calling other moms and dads to try to pitch hit for him. We really need to fix this because we are now on our third summer of hell, and we can't wait for the funding from the Gateway Tunnel project. That's why I've gone back to Amtrak. We need to hold them accountable. They need to fix the catenary wires. I've driven $300 million in for that fix alone. We've driven billions in for Northeast Rail. I want an explanation of exactly where that's gone, and we need to do more here in New Jersey, like innovative things like transit-oriented development, which feeds back into our transit system. But right now, it's simply unacceptable.
Congressman Gottheimer, I know this is a topic you're passionate
Listen,
about.
on the transit piece, you can't have a top state like we have without a top mass transit system. And right now, as Mikey pointed out, people are waiting in the summer. Their trains are either canceled or delayed. This has happened to my family a lot. And you can't get home to see your kids at night, right? You can't get to coach. It's killing people. We gotta fix this. We gotta do it now. And we're paying Amtrak $200 million a year to use their rail, and they stick it to our families all the time. They hold our trains up while they let their trains go by. It's ridiculous. We need to stand up to them. Just like we got to stand up to New York and their outrageous congestion tax. New York sticks it to us every day. The fact that they're taxing our families another $9 a day now to drive into New York on top of what you pay to go over the GW Bridge or through the tunnels is ridiculous. Those are nurses and electricians and firefighters and teachers. They're getting killed, and all we're getting is more traffic and pollution by the GW Bridge already because of this congestion tax. We got to fight them, keep fighting them. And by the way, I appreciate the governor doing that. We all have to fight them. And when I'm governor, believe me, this will end.
Mayor Phillip.
I'm not going to talk about congestion pricing yet, but let me start by saying that as a mayor in Jersey City, I don't think anybody in the state other than Phil Murphy has more direct experience with transit systems than I do. We started the largest microtransit system in the country via under Jersey City. We've done 2.5 million rides. We did it without state help. We're unfortunately in the ferry business because we couldn't find an operator. We have the largest bike share program in the state of New Jersey. You got to think about kind of concrete steps that you can do to change New Jersey Transit because it has failed. First, whoever is the governor needs to cancel the Turnpike widening project, $11 billion boondoggle, and reallocate that money to mass transit right out of the gate. You could expand mass transit, light rail, and improve the system so that it's safe, reliable, and clean. Secondly, when they passed the funding source that we were the first to advocate for last year towards New Jersey Transit, they only did it for 5 years. Typical Trenton, they didn't fix the problem. The problem with that is that you can't bond against that, and it's not a recurring revenue, essentially. So you need to fix that. And then third, on the buses, big issue. Privatization of the buses is a problem. You need to bring that back in-house in order to make sure that they're running efficiently as they should be.
Senator
All
Sweeney.
right.
I just want to give Senator Sweeney a quick chance to.
Okay, first, just to get the facts straight, it was Loretta Weinberg and myself that called for a funding source in 2018 for New Jersey Transit, just to get the facts straight. Secondly, around the world, they run transit really, really well. My son was in Japan recently, and he told me They apologize when they're 30 seconds late. You know what I mean? They take such pride in their transit. We need the right leadership in this state. I'm excited about Chris Clory being there right now because he's an expert in transportation. But this is an embarrassment and it's an insult to the citizens of this state. And oh, by the way, I would love to have some transit in southern New Jersey. It would be very, very nice to see because it doesn't exist. But at the end of the day, like I said, we cannot accept this poor performance. It's not okay.
Cecilia, thank you for your question. We're going to carry on with our panel. David Wildstein, you're next with
Thanks.
a
I want to
question.
shift to another issue, and there's so many, and we just unfortunately can't get to them all, but one of the important constitutional powers of a governor is to nominate judges. And I have a series of questions regarding your philosophy. I'd love to just do thumbs up, thumbs down. You guys don't always take to that, so maybe you'll agree to maybe let's lessen the amount of time you spend on each so that I can go through them. But the next state Supreme Court seat, if one of you is elected governor, would be up during your first term. That's Justice Ann Patterson, a Republican. Do you believe that, or do you believe that in the continuing this tradition of a partisan balance on the New Jersey Supreme Court, are you ready to commit that you would appoint a Republican to replace Justice Patterson? You're so anxious, I stumbled, so I'll let you go.
I got you. And the short answer is no. I think you've seen that decorum thrown out at the federal level as it relates to bipartisan support on justices. I think that the bench, as it relates to the Supreme Court of New Jersey, should reflect how New Jersey is. New Jersey has 1 million more Democrats here. If you look at the congressional districts, it's disproportionately Democrat, and I think that the bench should reflect that. So no, I would not just appoint a Republican because of the sake of historical fact it's been a Republican.
I would have to
Senator,
agree
let's
with
go,
that.
by the way, if we could just go maybe 10
Real quick.
seconds.
Yeah,
We'll
I'll
do
be
this
quick.
quickly. Okay.
Listen, I fought Christie to the death on this one. As you know, it's history.
He liked you better than he liked me.
Well, guess what? I didn't like what he was doing with, listen, he didn't like what I did with the courts, David. You know he didn't like what we did with the courts, because we fought to the end to make sure that we had a balanced court. You know, we don't want to pack courts. We want an independent court. Our courts are the best in the nation. Unanimous decisions, Republicans and Democrats, more times than not, because they work together. So, look, Christie, back when he was the governor, tried to pack that court. I'm not making it up. It's history. I stopped him.
I think that I would agree with Mayor Phillip, but I also would say that we should be looking at diversity on these courts, and not just diversity in terms of demographic and race, but also diversity in terms of how people served and where they served. Like, we can't keep getting the same judges from the same circles of people all of the time. That we have to become more diverse at finding judges or finding lawyers that can become judges in spaces that we don't normally go to,
So
and
maybe
that's important.
On that, and stick with you just 10 seconds, though, there is a lack of diversity in the highest levels of the judiciary,
Yes.
and those are chosen by only the Chief Justice. Do you believe that appellate court judges should be nominated directly by the governor with the advice and consent of the Senate? Or do you like this system where the Chief Justice names everybody once they're there?
Well, obviously, there's something wrong. There's a lack of diversity in a diverse state. There's the lack of diversity in race and nationality, the lack of diversity in gender, lack of diversity in where we're finding judges at, period. The circles are getting smaller and smaller. It's like a old boys network. I think ultimately, I would approve the governor appointing people with the advice and consent of the Senate. I would definitely support that 100,000%.
All right, Congresswoman, you had something you want to say on this?
We definitely need to address diversity of both race and gender on the bench. I think that's critically important. I also think we have to move more quickly to get people on the bench, but I would not undo the historic balance between Republicans and Democrats. I come from a place that has gotten so partisan that it is almost impossible at different times to reach across the aisle and come to deals. And you know what? That's how legislatures work. And so working together in the legislature, I think senatorial courtesy is important. I think trying to build a more courteous legislature, which we have in Trenton compared to what we see in Washington, D.C., is so critically important.
But let's be clear on this one, though. When we're
think
talking,
Congressman Gottheimer started.
When-
but
okay,
I promise I'll come to you, Mayor.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, I'll answer. I was just going to say, to your point, which I think is very important, it should be advising consent, right? We can't have one person picking, and it'll solve some of the issues that we're talking about here that Mayor Baraka raised, right? That we can address a lot of these issues if we change the way that process works, and I think that's critically important.
I think we've got to be careful here. If we're using the United States Supreme Court as our model for what we want to see and where we want to go to, that's problematic. Anybody that I'm talking about appointing, it's a conversation. It's a conversation about what your views are, what your beliefs are, not necessarily the letter that's after your name. And I think that's our start place. I think that has gotten us to a place where we have had bipartisan support on important issues, including in the courts. But we shouldn't just make it political for the sake of being political. We've seen the boss structure and other challenges around politics in the state. We've got to make sure we find the right people who are going to do the job and support the values that we hold. But I'll also say this, if we're talking about moving appointments, additional judges through the Senate with advice and consent, let's also look at where we're at in that sense. One of the big reasons we have the shortage that we do is because there's so many holds, right, with senatorial courtesy where we can't fill positions. And what matters to folks more than anything else is they can't get a resolution on any issues because there aren't enough judges. They can't move their cases through. And that has a real impact on folks' lives, how long they stay behind bars or how long it takes to resolve a simpler issue. We've got to be mindful of that when we talk about moving things through advice and consent of the Senate.
Let's not let you do the timer. Let's really stick to 10 seconds.
I just want to say,
Go ahead. Honestly, David, what we got to be careful of, as Democrats, we always think we're winning everything all the time. That we don't. You got it, Mayor. And we had Chris Christie for 8 years. He tried to pack the court. So if we're going to pack the courts, then they have every right to. We have the best system in the country, and we need to protect it.
I emphatically disagree. I think that we've learned a lesson here that Democrats need to fight and have a tenacity to show a backbone. The Republicans don't play by those rules, and we repeatedly go back and say, we'll play nice because it's the historical way that it's been, and you've seen what's happened at the federal government. It's no secret that New Jersey is viewed as a purple state. If it becomes red, do you think that the Republicans are going to say, well, this is the way it's been historically? The state judiciary should reflect the electorate and the people that live here. And there are 1 million more Democrats here. The congressional districts reflect that, and our bench should reflect that.
So
Listen, saying that we have to have a backbone, we did have a backbone. We blocked several Republican nominees. So it's easier to say than it is to do it. And guess what, Mayor? It was hard as hell, but we did it.
So this is no comment, just it's got to be thumbs up, thumbs down, and this is an old system.
It does because my producer's in my ear too.
Yeah,
So yes.
so I'm just going to go real. The Hughes Compact that allows the Hughes Compact allows the bar associations to review judges and effectively give them a thumbs up or a thumbs down. This has been around for 50 years. Every governor has an opportunity to renew it or say I'm not going to do it. So let's go real quick. It's either yes or no. I'll adopt the Hughes Compact.
Yes.
I think that's an important compact.
Yes.
I have no issue with it.
Right, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, now we're going to move on to Joey Fox with our next question.
So I brought up immigrants in New Jersey in my prior question. Another group that the new Trump administration has clearly shown interest in targeting is transgender Americans. If Republicans in Washington were to get all of their goals passed, it would mean that transgender Americans would be limited in their ability to change their gender on federal documents, to join sports teams that match with their gender identity, to do all sorts of other things. I want to ask about that last policy in particular. In New Jersey K through 12 schools, do you think that transgender kids should be allowed to play on sports teams that match their gender identity rather than their sex at birth?
Yes, and I'll say this, I think often we have this conversation and we want to disconnect the person from a policy or the thing we're saying. At the end of the day, I'm in our schools all the time. I'm a teacher, right? And I understand that our most important charge is making sure every student feels safe, supported, encouraged, and that they can go on and be successful people, right? And serving in our economy, in our nation. And look, as a former hockey player too, I also know that, guess what? The vast majority of the kids who are playing sports or doing other things, you're not going Division I, you're not going pro, but what you are doing is you're learning. You're learning about how to support one another. You're learning about the values that can maybe help you succeed as a person as you grow older. You're benefiting in so many ways that at so many early ages, to say to folks, listen, we're going to deprive you of that opportunity and ability. We are not even going to recognize you or see you. We're already going to take a group that is the most at risk and say, we're going to even make things worse for you and harder and more challenging. Again, I go back to our values. I don't think that's who we are. I don't think that's who we are, even as we have conversations more broadly.
Mayor Philip and then Congresswoman Sherrill.
Yeah, the short answer is yes. And look, Jersey City has a track record on this. Besides being one of the largest LGBTQ communities in the state of New Jersey, in 2018, before the trans conversation was even a conversation, we extended coverage in our healthcare in Jersey City to the trans community for the reason that we had 3 trans employees, because we thought it was the right thing to do. Now, you have an administration in Washington that is vilifying the trans community, and nobody is standing up for them. There are people here that have had questionable votes as it relates to standing up for the trans community. If you understand that the trans community is subject to higher suicide rates, higher depression rates, higher drug use rates, you would understand that if you are arguing for the most vulnerable people and you are compassionate, you would say yes to this and you would advocate strongly for them.
Right.
You know, I think as Democrats, we have to come up with a plan, and then we have to focus on that, and we have to stop falling for the bait. In fact, I have a friend in Congress, the first trans woman, who was constantly targeted by the press in some of these trans votes. And when she was asked about sports and trans people, she said, I guess I don't understand how this is lowering costs for people in Delaware. We have to do better. We have to pass our legislation on supporting families, on making sure we're protecting vulnerable people, on making sure all of the things that are being threatened here in New Jersey, like as I've heard, having, you know, some Moms for Liberty type person go out on soccer fields and try to check 7th grade girls' soccer teams for trans people. This is ridiculous. It's not our state. It's targeting vulnerable people. And quite frankly, it's bullshit. And we have to do better at protecting vulnerable people, but we can't fall into these traps because we're losing. And we need to win on this issue.
I mean, does anyone on the stage support policies that would restrict the ability of transgender people to do these various things that I was
Well,
mentioning?
you should check their votes and see if they did that or not. That's the only way you really could tell, you know? I mean, everybody's gonna say, yeah, while we up here on this panel. You know that, right? I mean, the reality is seriously that we don't have a wave of transgender students playing sports, you know, that they identify with, whatever, in schools. This is something that these people came up with, like the immigrant crime wave. This is ridiculous, right? We ought to be defending human beings no matter how they identify themselves. That our job, I don't know who's in you guys' family, but American families are mixed. We have straight people and gay people in our family, right? We have folks that might be transgender in our families as well. So what do? Not invite them over for Thanksgiving because they say they're gay or they're transgender? It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous argument. It's a ridiculous fight. Some people are up here saying they support things that they have not supported. That's just a fact. They have not voted for any of these things. They have not come out and said anything about it, but they'll say it now. And I'm going to hold them all to it after this thing is over, to make sure when we have our transgender rally, I'm going to invite all of them to be there and support transgender in public on Main Street, not just at the Globe debate.
Does anybody else want to weigh on, because we have a student coming up? So we're going to bring on our next Rider University student. That is Juliana Diaz-Ospina.
Can I just real quickly?
10 seconds.
Honestly, what's going on is horrible. People are being targeted and divided. The trans community, like the gay community, needs to be protected and looked after and supported. So, like I said, this is not the America I grew up in, where there's so much hate.
It was my America.
Yeah, and I was
I know.
trying to, I didn't get a chance to comment.
I'll give you 10 seconds. I know how passionate
I know. I was trying to
you
comment
are.
on this. Is a very big issue for me. I just want to let you know, as a dad, and I think we all feel this way as parents, it kills you to see these kids. We know that there's the trans kids, there's 25% higher suicide rates. They try to commit suicide because of how they're treated. And this is some game by Washington, as Ross Baracco was pointing out, right? They try to divide people up. You don't want Marjorie Taylor Greene making these decisions for New Jersey, for our families. You want experts. You want the people who know what they're doing to make these decisions. And it's outrageous what they're trying to do with this issue.
Juliana, we're going over to you now for your question.
The water company that serves my hometown and campus, Trenton Water Works, has been cited for 132 violations over the past 20 years. It has been shut down more than 40 times in the past decade for treatment failures. In November, customers were notified that an employee falsified records and no water testing may have been done for more than a year. And there is a federal investigation into whether its lead pipe replacement program was defrauded by a contractor. Please raise your hand if you believe it is your job as governor to make sure we all have clean water.
I think it's our job as governor to make sure we all have clean water.
Can I
Well, I
expand
did
on
it
that?
as the mayor,
Can I?
so I'm going to do it as the
I'd
governor.
like to expand on that. We passed a bill called the Water Quality Accountability Act. Because what we found out was the private sector water companies are held to a much higher standard, and government was held to a much lower standard. So making governments sign on the dotted line, and the mayor did a great job with his lead pipes, but making mayors sign on the dotted line that their water systems are working the way they're supposed to. This young lady, it's horrible what's going in Trenton. It's not acceptable. And I don't know how many times we've sent crews in to take it over, and it still hasn't worked. But we did pass a bill to address water quality because that should be a right, especially in New Jersey.
Well, I got a fair amount of scrutiny, so I don't know if the private sector is held to a different standard because I got hit pretty hard. But the reality is we changed 23,000 lead service lines without any cost to the taxpayers whatsoever. We employed local residents. We got black and brown subcontractors to participate in that. We created millionaires by creating a public works project to make sure that we did everything we needed to do to make sure our water quality was safe. And not just around lead, but around other issues as well. We have an incredible water director, Kareem Adeem. I believe in the public should own the assets. I don't think we should be privatizing our assets. The water assets belong to us, and we should not say that these things are so bad that we need to give it to the private sector. We need to keep them under our control. We need to manage them and have oversight. We just need to do it better than we have been doing. We need to invest more money in our infrastructure. And water infrastructure is one of the most important things that we need to be invested in outside of transportation infrastructure as well.
Josh Kleinheimer's next.
I'm so sorry with what you and your family are going through because, as everyone points out here, it's outrageous. Literally getting poisoned by lead and forever chemicals is something I've been fighting for years, and why we fought so hard in Washington. I helped write and pass the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which brought resources back to Jersey for all of our communities here to help make sure we address lead in the drinking water, to get these forever chemicals out, so that our families and our kids don't go to school worrying about this and their kids getting poisoned with lead and other chemicals. It's awful, and we've got to make sure that everyone's held accountable for that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, in a densely populated state like New Jersey, environmental justice is a real conversation. You see a disproportionate amount of challenging infrastructure, whether it's gas, whether it's water, being placed in challenged communities, economically poorer communities. It's not the same standards for the wealthier in New Jersey. I think what Raz said is accurate. We both deal with this. The privatization of water is something that New Jersey needs to be aggressive about. As it relates to remediation of leads, this goes back to what we said earlier about unfunded mandates. I know last year New Jersey told, for example, Jersey City, we need to remediate those. It's a $10 million cost to our taxpayers, but they didn't help us out. I think the governor really needs to prioritize what he says with action and support it with infrastructure costs that are necessary to achieve it. And so that would be different on how I would approach it if I became governor.
So
Yeah,
just
first,
a correction.
I also say-
I just want to make a correction. I didn't get any infrastructure money from anybody to do the thing we did in Newark. We went to the private sector. We bonded our dollars. All of that money came after us because the people in Newark, we did it ourselves, and the rest of the country benefited from the work that we did in the city of Newark.
And
I
I'm
think the
not
county,
out-
I think the
so-
county,
This
I think
is-
the
So we're
county
almost out of
has-
time. We're almost out of time, so I want to give Sean Spiller and
I
Mikey
think the
Sherrill
county helped.
10
Yeah,
seconds each.
This is a
They
little
gave us
Very
their bond
briefly.
rating.
This
They
is
did.
a little bit, that answer is part of the problem, right? We do need a governor, right, who goes at this and says, you should never be going through what you're going through. And we have as an obligation as a state to make sure we're looking at these issues more regionally. As a mayor, and certainly one who's invested heavily in our infrastructure and making the improvements that we hope in every one of our communities, we understand very clearly and very quickly how connected all of these things are. And if we're truly trying to make a difference, we can't rely on just our individual municipalities, towns, cities to say, you're on your own. Hope you can fix it. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. We've got to play a role in that as well and say when we're helping a region, especially in parts of the state where our infrastructure is so old, the state can have a role there to help incentivize and bring folks together to say, as you're making your improvements, well, let's tie that to the work happening right next door and putting all those pieces together to make your lives better.
This
Okay,
is
Mikey,
one of
Cheryl, and then
the first field hearings that I worked on when I was the Environment Subcommittee Chair on Science, Space, and Technology. And then because of that field hearing, we drove federal money in to replace lead lines in both Bloomfield and Belleville. This is critically important to children's health, and I think making sure that we were working hard to get as much money in as we can from outside so we don't have to drive up costs for people on the ground.
All right, thank you very much, and we thank our student from Rider University. I apologize, we've got to move on now because it is time now for our closing statements. That order, too, was determined by another draw. We are going to give in the order of Steve Sweeney. You're going to be first, followed by Sean Spiller, Raz Baraka, Steve Phillip, Josh Gottheimer, and Mikey Sherrill. Steve Sweeney, you're up.
Well, again, thank you for the opportunity to be up here and my fellow candidates to be here so we can start expressing how we think about the future of New Jersey. I'm the one candidate that's running that actually knows where the lights in the bathroom is day one. I know it sounds silly, but that's the truth. We have a lot of challenges in New Jersey, but we need to make New Jersey the strongest economy in the nation. And we need to do that by controlling our spending and targeting our investments into higher education where we can actually bring value. New Jersey's the most educated workforce in the nation. That's why we're a high-income state. We need to create more of that. So I am thrilled to have had the opportunity to be here tonight. Look forward to 2 more. Thank you.
Sean Spiller, you're next.
Well, thank you, and again, thank you to everybody for this important conversation. And I truly believe that this is our chance to get a New Jersey that works for more of us. And I say that as, yes, the son of immigrants whose parents chose to come to this country and this state, but I saw firsthand as a kid how many opportunities but obstacles they also faced. I've seen it as that high school teacher when I see the parents of the kids that come to school every day facing challenging choices that they have to make. I've seen it as a mayor and done something about it, making sure we address having quality housing that's affordable in our communities, but we need it in every single one of our communities because it's such a burden on so many. I've fought as a labor leader to say we need quality, affordable health care because these, again, are challenges for so many where they have to choose between food on the table and maybe getting the care that they need. These are the spaces that we need someone who's fighting for us each and every day on these issues. Not just someone that we get out there for, we put up that lawn sign, and we hope that in the moments when they're behind those closed doors in those rooms, they maybe remember us or think of our issues. We need to put up those lawn signs for ourselves and our neighbors and our families and those issues that we care about. That's who I will be as your governor, centering the issues that affect you because they affect me. That's who I am, and that's why I ask for your support. Thank you.
Mr. Baraka, you're next.
The real question we need to ask ourselves is where do we want to be a year from now? Do we want to be weak and scared or strong and proud? Do we want to be chasing Donald Trump around, or do we want to be building affordable housing, lowering the cost of health care, building a diverse economy, leaning on diversity, equity, and inclusion in our state, protecting women's right to choose, protecting our neighbors, whether they got here 40 years ago or 40 minutes ago, protecting families and people that are either gay or straight. We have to be talking about building an economy that sees us all, that includes us all, where everybody gets an opportunity to be a part of the middle class, where they can own homes, where we invest in businesses, small businesses and mid-sized businesses, whether they're black or brown or women. We need to invest in all business in this state. We need to be growing an economy that includes everybody in this room and everybody in this state. We can do that. We have a choice to do that right now. We can choose to go with what we've been doing and get the results that we've been getting, or we could choose to do something different, something exciting, something historical. We can reimagine this state. We got a choice, only one choice, really, only one choice, because there's only 2 people running for governor up here, all of them and me. Choose Raz Baraka, Democrat for governor, June.
Mr. Phillip, you're next.
It's really unfortunate I have to go after Raz. It's really... let me start by saying thank you for a great debate and forum. You know, I started this campaign 1.5 years ago, and I started it with really a different goal. The goal was to be substantive on policy, very, very detailed, and we've done that. We've rolled out policies that are more comprehensive than anybody else out here. It takes time to do that. And the second thing is we wanted to build a grassroots organization to change the infrastructure here in New Jersey, and we've done that. Now look, I know that our campaign isn't for everybody because we really speak openly about change in tough conversations. We talk about reforming taxes. We talk about the turnpike widening. We talk about congestion pricing. You have candidates up here that will look at what the polling says and then say, you know what, that's what the public wants to hear, and I'm going to tell them that. And I believe that if you're going to change New Jersey, you really need to lean into tough conversations and be honest with all of you. And so our campaign isn't for everybody. I'll be the first to say that. But if you believe that New Jersey is capable of better, if you believe that it's capable of change, and you believe in substantive policy, then I do think our campaign is for you, and I hope you consider joining it.
Mr. Gottheimer.
Thank you for having us. The good news is, when you look around, when it comes to choice and the environment, everyone up here share democratic values, and that's a great thing. I'm the only one, though, who's actually put out a tax cut plan to tackle the number one issue I believe facing families in Jersey that I hear over and over about affordability. We've got to make life more affordable for families. Housing that's affordable is killing people. We got to make sure we get child care costs down, and we got to get our property taxes down and deal with income taxes for the middle class. My tax cut plan does this. It's fully paid for. It's at joshforjersey.com. I urge you to read it. And because we can solve this problem. I'm somebody with a long record of solving the toughest problems. We can get this done. We got to be positive and optimistic about it. And if we work together, there's nothing that can stop us, given how great of a state we live in. And I'm very, very proud to be running for governor. I ask for your support. Thank you so much.
Mikey Sherrill.
Well, you've heard the complicated issues that we are facing here in New Jersey, and you know the complicated issues we're facing coming from Washington. So if we want to move New Jersey forward, we're going to need a strong Democratic governor, and that's exactly what I'll be. It's time to lead, follow, or get out of the way, and I choose to lead. If you want somebody to build houses that are affordable for our state, we're going to need a strong Democratic governor. If you want to make sure that we're addressing roads and rails and buses, you're going to need a strong Democratic governor. If you want to make sure that somebody is protecting your abortion rights, you are definitely going to need a strong Democratic governor. And if you want a candidate who is not going to be the status quo, who's not going to put up with business as usual, you're going to need a strong Democratic governor. We know what's coming, New Jersey, and you know who I am. You know who I serve. And I'm going to lead, and I'd ask for your vote. And please go to MikeySherrill.com and check out more about my campaign. Thanks so much. Let's build something.
And that concludes the Democratic New Jersey gubernatorial primary debate. I'd like to thank all of the candidates for their time and for their responses. Thank you to our panelists, David Reilstein, Micah Rasmussen, Joey Fox. I'd also like to thank Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Jersey for presenting this debate. I knew I was going to say date night, not debate night. And RWJ Barnabas Health, Prudential, and McCarter and English for sponsoring this debate. This evening's debate was produced by the New Jersey Globe, On New Jersey, and Rider University. We would like to remind you to join us on Tuesday night for the Republican primary debate starting at 7 p.m. I'm Laura Jones. Thank you so much for watching.